I should probably preface this presentation by saying that I think I'm perhaps the first person up here who's not an architect. So I come from a pretty different disciplinary tradition. So my background is actually in computer science and physics. So I'm coming much more from the perspective of someone who designs and builds technology. So this is my research group, High Low Tech. And we approach this challenge of reculturing technology primarily through two different strategies. On the one hand, we build tools and experiences to help empower people to build their own technology. So we want to help people design and construct their own computationally driven systems. And then on the other hand, we are interested in putting technology into new material contexts. And by putting technology into new material contexts, that also kind of by necessity puts technology into different cultural contexts. And these two approaches blend together in what we believe is kind of a powerful way to reach out and engage different kinds of people in technology development. So I want to look at those two facets of our research in depth a bit. So this is a slide kind of showing some of what we've been doing, engaging people in developing their own technologies. Important in this slide is that we're especially interested in engaging people that have been traditionally left out of the technology construction process. So people from all walks of life, people of many different colors, many different genders, ages, and so on. So we're really particularly excited about trying to broaden technology culture in the human sense. Then kind of looking at more at the material side of things. These are some snapshots that give you a little bit of sense of the way that we experiment with different materials in our practice and in our research. So we like to blend technology, and in particular electronics and computation, with materials like wood and paper, paint, and textiles. So I want to spend some time today talking about a particular project and how all of these ideas can potentially come together in a powerful way, I think, to really in a practical and really realized way change the culture of technology. So I'm going to talk about a project that I've been working on for almost 5 years or something now, called Lilypad Arduino. So first, what is Lilypad Arduino? So Lilypad Arduino is a toolkit that I designed that lets people embed electronics and computation into their clothing and other textile artifacts. So what it consists of is a set of sewable electronic modules that you can see here that are stitched together with electrically conductive thread. So it's the spool of thread that you see there is electrically conductive. So this was a project that came out of actually my PhD research. So it was initially a research prototype that I developed in my lab, but kind of midway through the process of developing the kit, I really wanted to get it out there to real people in the real world. So I released it as a commercial toolkit in 2007. And since 2007, it's actually been adopted by people around the world, which has been really exciting and wonderful. So now there are thousands of people around the world who are using this toolkit to do all sorts of interesting things. So here's just a couple of snapshots that give you a sense of the kind of things that people are using this toolkit to construct. So the kinds of technologies that people are building with the kit. So what you can see here, here's some interactive jewelry in the center there. This is a dance costume that contains a bunch of embedded sensors that are monitoring the dancer's motion, and then that sensor information is sent to a computer where it's turned into video or audio data. In the lower right-hand corner, you see an evening gown that monitors CO2 levels in its wearer's environment. Up in the upper left-hand corner, this is kind of a more fanciful piece, but really beautifully illustrates how people are using this to combine traditional crafting practices with technology practices. So this is an interactive embroidery wall hanging that you can kind of move up to and interact with it, and it will produce different light and sound patterns. So important to note in these images, first is that all of this stuff happened away from me in my lab. So these are real people that I don't know, just out in the world building stuff with this tool. What gets me most excited when I look at this photo here is, on the one hand, the fact that these artifacts really don't look like traditional pieces of technology. So they just don't look and feel like what we think of as technology, but of course, they're very legitimate chunks of technology. But perhaps more important and more interestingly is that the glimpse that you get into the community of people who are building these things shows you, or perhaps gives you a hint that this community is pretty different than a traditional technology tinkering, kind of electrical engineering, computer science-y tech community. So once designs like this started to percolate out in the real world, I became increasingly interested in really documenting this phenomenon. So really examining and documenting this intuition that community is really different than other existing technology communities. So in particular, just really wanted to know in a kind of quantitative sense who's using this kit. To get at that question, it seemed reasonable to contrast the Lilypad community, so the people of the community people who are using that toolkit, with a more traditional community of people who are tinkering with electronics and computation. So I ran this past year a study contrasting the users of the Lilypad Arduino toolkit with the users of the traditional Arduino toolkit. So before I get into the kind of data that we collected, I wanted to just give you kind of a qualitative portrait of these two communities. So on the left, you again see the slide of the Lilypad projects and the Lilypad kit. And then on the right there is a little bit of a snapshot of the traditional Arduino community. And there you can see that people are building all sorts of, again, wonderful and interesting things. But they're different. So they're here in this community, they're building things like robots, camera controllers, home security systems, and audio equipment. So again, really creative, wonderful stuff, but pretty different from what you see over here on the left. And perhaps especially striking in these images is a little glimpse into some gender issues around technology. So in this study, we were particularly interested in examining some of those issues. So what I did is I collected a bunch of projects that were posted online at various media sharing sites like Flickr and Vimeo and YouTube. And we kind of sorted the projects that we collected, Arduino projects and Lilypad projects, and then we classified those by gender. And what we got was pretty astonishing, actually, more stark of a contrast than I had even perhaps expected. But what you see there on the left is the Arduino projects that were documented online, kind of categorized by gender. That tiny little green strip at the very bottom, that's 2% of the projects that we found online were done by women. Of course, there's probably some women up there in that unknown slice. And then in contrast with the Lilypad projects that were done and then posted online in some public forum. 65% of those were done by women. So just to give these numbers some more context, let me give you some other numbers. So women received 11% of computer science bachelor degrees in 2008, 9% of computer engineering degrees, 12% of electrical engineering degrees. So kind of sad. At my home institution, the Media Lab, which if you're familiar with the Media Lab, you might think, the Media Lab, that's going to be a really diverse place. They do things with art and technology. It's going to be, much better than these other kind of traditional techie places. Well, maybe a little bit better, but still pretty sad. This really sets the backdrop for the community that we just saw. Let's just go kind of qualitatively. Let's keep looking at the Lilypad community a bit more and see some of the other projects that people have been working on. So you see interactive fashion projects, you see sportswear projects, you see quirky user interface projects. This is some interesting user interface up there, the pink heart. Another one there with the teddy bear. This is kind of a soft video game controller. Interesting interactive artworks people are building. Again, some more projects. And again, kind of more interesting glimpses into who these people are that are building these things. And some more interesting projects. And here we are back at this one again. So this is one project that I've been involved in for quite some time. So what does this tell us about the future of technology? What can we learn from this project? So when I think about technology, kind of coming from, again, a pretty traditional technology-centered background, these are the things that I tend to think of. And particularly, these are the things that I tend to think of when I think of the people who are building the tools that we use to then employ technology in our own practices. So these are the people who are writing the software that powers the generative design systems, for example. So when I think about those communities, this is kind of what I think of those communities looking like. So we have things like Slashdot, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar, a kind of online community for nerds. Think of kind of more traditional electronics and what that looks like. So traditional electronics doesn't look like the Lilypad stuff that we saw. It looks more like this. Yeah, kind of classic nerd pride, matrixy looking type stuff where if you're real hardcore, you do everything by the command line. And this little blurb here, this was, I was compiling some code and I left out just a semicolon, and compiler spits out all sorts of error messages. So, yeah. And then there are these really cute boys playing with their Lego Mindstorms projects, building robots, and these kids are going to grow up to, as adults, probably participate in some of these other activities that I just showed, and some of these other communities. So I want to say, actually, that all this is wonderful. So all of this traditional technology stuff is great. So command line tools are powerful. Lego Mindstorms, what a great technology that empowered, generations of people to work creatively with technology in all sorts of new ways. So these boys, it's so wonderful that they have this technology that they can use to build things and that they can have so much fun and be engaged. The problem that I have is that this is a really limited vision of technology culture. And there's this amazingly huge unexplored space that kind of looks maybe like this. So it's maybe beautiful, maybe soft, maybe feminine, maybe colorful, maybe crafty, maybe round, and kind of most critical, it appeals to and engages a different kind of person. And so I really think that these people, these kinds of people, these girls here, it's not that they're not creating technology because they're not smart enough or they're lack in aptitude for math. It's really just that there's nothing engaging for them here over in this left-hand side. And if we build tools that are appealing to and make sense to different kinds of people that enable them to construct technology and work creatively with technology, they'll show up and they'll do all sorts of wonderful and amazing things. So I think that's the lesson that we can learn from the Lilypad project and that I'd like to communicate to you guys. So if you build it, they'll come. So if you build different kinds of systems, different kinds of people will show up, and it's important for us to do that. So a couple of acknowledgments, just especially the people whose projects I showcased in this presentation. And then thank you very much.